His Excellency Governor Obaseki to just have a word with us. Your Excellency, are you there, sir? You can unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. It's good to have you on, sir.
Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, we want to quickly go into the matter. A lot of people want to hear from you. So many things are happening around Nigeria. We already know. We are part of the process. But today, a big news is coming out of Nigeria, from Edo State. Unfortunately, it is not a very good news. And people are very disenchanted. They want to hear your voice. We'll be feeling the pulse of the people. Your Excellency, Governor Obaseki, what is happening, sir?
Thank you very much. First, let me thank you, the Comrade Show, Loretta, and all of you hardworking brothers and sisters in the diaspora who have kept the dialogue going. I also want to use this opportunity to thank all the men and women of God who, in their wisdom and inspiration, have thought it wise that a program like this be set up, a day like this be set aside to pray for Edo State and continue to seek the intervention of God Almighty in our affairs. I'm sure you have been reading news clips from social media, developments in Nigeria since after the elections, which in all of you, there are elections where all of you worked very hard to ensure we all came out successful. We've been dealing with this End SARS protest. This is protest by an array of young people against police brutality and police brutality and a whole lot of vices and offenses committed in the name of the Nigerian police. These demonstrations have been on for a couple of weeks. And the more you hear reports of what had actually transpired in terms of the way the SARS arm, or the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, as they call them, SARS, have conducted themselves and conducted businesses and abused people and their human rights over the years. Something very, very wrong had gone on for close up to a decade in the country. And therefore, the protests were calling, on the authorities to undertake fundamental reforms in the police as a whole, and also bring those people who have perpetrated these crimes to justice. I believe is justified, and I still believe so. So also in a democracy, I believe that the Constitution also offers individuals the right to protest, to complain, when they feel affected. So we, as a person and as a government, we have nothing against the anti-SARS protest. And by the way, most of them have been well organized. The ones in Benin have, the protesters have conducted themselves well. In fact, when they wrote to me a couple of weeks ago that they wanted to undertake a protest, I did ask the Commissioner for Police to provide them adequate security for them to conduct a peaceful protest. But as you are aware, the situation in Nigeria globally, and in Nigeria in particular, because of all the unclear policy measures we've undertaken over the last several decades, have now come home to roost. With COVID-19, where the bulk of, for the bulk of this year, people haven't worked, people haven't earned income, people haven't undertaken their normal economic activities, a lot of people have had to be laid off. You can imagine the social tension and stress which it has now created across the board, particularly in a state like Edo, where a lot of young people over the years have not been properly educated, And, the economic policies have not created the growth of businesses of the private sector. So you have a large pool of unemployed and sometimes unemployable young men and women who, who out of no fault of theirs, need to be accommodated. And so with the NSAS protests going on, it then metamorphosed into other forms of protests. And some of them, unfortunately, were just not well uncontrollable. It was on a short holiday. I had to come back, to Benin, when I realized that, the young men, some young men had hijacked the legitimate SARS protests and had, hoodlums had taken over the protests. They started setting up barricades, illegal barricades, harassing individuals, and just generally tending to make the state ungovernable. What was a bit worrying was that some of the rhetoric, some of the attitudes that we saw exhibited by these hoodlums were not totally dissimilar to some, the way they were talking and behaving during the electioneering, calling themselves lions and tigers. And so for us, it became an issue not of protest, but of law and order. And you will agree with me that if there's a breakdown of law and order, everybody suffers. And so we had to come in, I had to step in, imposed a 24-hour curfew in Edo State because things got out of control last Tuesday when these these hoodlums went into Benin prison and the Oko prison and released inmates, several of them on death row, several of them having committed a lot of heinous crimes. So you can imagine the danger that had been unleashed on our state. We had no choice but to try and bring things under control. Flew in, went to see the Inspector General of Police, went to see the Chief of Defense Staff to get more federal support. And with the 24-hour curfew, we were able to bring things under control. If you see the images of what happened in those prisons, it was quite devastating. I mean, so what have we done since then? We've tried to bring things under control. The Inspector General sent a Deputy Inspector General to Benin to work with me. On Wednesday, along with all the service chiefs, undertook tours around the city. I mean, for those of you who know Benin City, it took me 1.5 hours from 30 Secular Junction to the bypass on Sakoba Road because it had been taken over. It was like another country. And it took the intervention of all the security chiefs to try and restore order in Benin City. By Thursday night, we were fairly comfortable with, the order that was, was coming in. I mean, we were seeing. And I then decided to lift the curfew so that people could go about their economic activities. It was approaching a weekend and we didn't want people to suffer that much. On Friday evening, Friday, the curfew was relaxed, and which was yesterday. And we thought things had was coming back to normal. But as at last night, we started seeing a regroup of these hoodlums. And by the way, it's just not restricted to Edo State or Benin City. It had become a phenomenon across the country. It started in Lagos, where this, you saw the amount of devastation and carnage that took place in Lagos, where they just indiscriminately went in, burned down government properties and attacked private properties, attacked shopping malls, attacked warehouses, to just ransack and, and steal. So that phenomenon started to spread across the country. And it got to Benin this morning, where they went in, gathered themselves, went into a medical store's warehouse, This is a warehouse on Horror Road where we store medical, medicaments, drugs, vaccines for immunization of people, of children. And we also use the opportunity to store some of the palliative materials there and the reserve palliative materials. And, contrary to what is being spread out, what's being propagated on the internet, these were more like the reserve palliatives from what we had been distributing over the last 4 months. Because over the last 4 months, we've received from CACOVID, from our own purse, from individuals and private organizations, total items totaling 1.1 million items. We've distributed about 1.19 million items. We've distributed about 1.112 of those items. And what we had, which was just like reserves, was about 7,300 of such items left. We had a whole range of items like rice, gari, noodles, spaghetti, sugar, beans, these were all a combination of all the items we distributed. But what was left, I think, was just about a few thousand cases of noodles and maybe 1 or 2 other items. So, just following the trend we're seeing across the country, they went in their hordes to take over, to first lay siege and then take over the warehouse and started looting their warehouse. First, we said, fine, if it's the food you want, let's give them the food items, if they were that staff, then all the food items were given to them. But they insisted on continuing to steal all the other items, the drugs with which we stock our hospitals. And it was really unfortunate that we tried not to use minimal force, tried to appeal, but you can tell that these were just hoodlums who were not interested in the progress of their society. They then went to another warehouse where we had kept the bulk of the palliatives we distributed. Unfortunately for them, all the items in that other warehouse had been fully distributed. So there was nothing left in the other warehouse. But unfortunately, that was a compound contained warehouses for other private organizations, people selling electronics. And then these young men went out and continued to pilfer and loot. Our worry was, if we allowed that situation to continue, you see, like we saw in Calabar today, they started moving moving into homes to harass, and we cannot allow such the total breakdown of law and order. And so this evening, I'm pleased to inform you that the security chiefs under my control undertook a counter-offensive. We were able to dispel the crowd. We've arrested quite a few of them. They're making useful statements as I speak to the police headquarters. And we pray that, this will bring some calmness into the state. And but I want, and hopefully restore some order. I want to tell you that first, it's a national phenomenon. It's not restricted to Edo, but that in the case of Edo, it took a very unfortunate turn because criminal elements. Criminal elements, and we found that some of them have been here. Were brought in for the purposes of elections and were given arms, and they have not been demobilized. And so such people were the core actors in going into the jails to release inmates and perpetuate the crimes they've been committing across the city. I know tonight is a prayer session. I just won't want to take too much of your time. I've spent about 10 or 12 minutes trying to explain, the immediate causes of immediate crisis situation at home. But to say that it was not unexpected. I had always predicted that this was going to be some of the post-COVID fallouts. COVID has put every nation, every state to test. And for states that were already weak, for states where the state systems and institutions were faltering, they will receive, huge brunt of the fallout of COVID-19, and that's what we're seeing here. I don't expect it to, blow away quickly, but that in itself is a challenge, and calls on us, particularly me, to ensure that we push harder in terms of fulfilling our electioneering promises, ensuring that we continue to invest in the economy, we would grow the economy, we want to give opportunities to young people to live productive lives. These are all challenges of development, and I can assure you that as governor, with God on our side, this too will pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. As always, it's always good to have you talk to Edo people. But just before you leave us, I just want to ask one last one, because the system right now is quite fragile as it is. Sir, do we still have in Edo State any other warehouse that has got palliatives that the Edo people need to know? And if there are, what are the plans of government going forward?
We don't have any. Like I said to you, in terms of, we started distributing, purchasing and distributing palliatives. We as a state don't spend our money since July, I think, June, July. And even all through, before the elections, through the elections, we distributed quite a lot. And as I said, out of 1,119,627 items, we only have about 7,000 left, and that was what was looted.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you so much. I am glad that I can tell you that we've got over 2,500 people right now watching us live on Facebook alone, and which means that this news is going to go far. It's important. This had to happen on this day. Immediately, this whole thing is happening, and His Excellency has come on to clear the air. For those who are making speculations, please, we want to appeal to you, particularly for the Edo youths at home. We want to appeal to you. Let us do our best to ensure that we keep the sanctity of our states. At this junction, I want to bring on Dr. Loretta. Dr. Loretta, please.
Just a quick point before Loretta comes in. Dr. Loretta comes in. Let me also say that, you see, these, I won't say protests, these, the reactions you're seeing is a very, very carefully planned and orchestrated reaction to bring the government down. And as you'll see, I believe right now at the police headquarters where they are interrogating, when the police finally dispersed some of the crowd this evening, they found about 8 people inside the warehouse already with phones, calling people outside, giving messages. So these are just not random reactions. And this whole spin you find on the internet is also part of the strategy to discredit government, to create a sense of fear, of hatred, to justify the crimes they continue to commit. So please try and understand, this is very well thought out, very well planned attack on the state. It's unfortunate it started with something legitimate like NSAS, but what we have today is people who are desperate, who are angry that they lost political power, or they are losing political power, they were not able to win elections. This is a fight back by the lions and tigers and their sponsors in Edo. Point in time, what we need most in the land is peace and healing. There's so much anger, there's so much frustration. And these are all challenges that did not start in one day and will not leave in one day. So we need the grace of God. We need His blessings. We need His intervention to see us through this difficult patch. So that will be that single prayer point. I would please request you, all the men and women of God, this evening, to make and intercede for us in Edo State.
Thank you very much.